So hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us at the 2022 Lichtel Career Fair. Just to make sure you are in the right room, this is the panel titled Professional Development Opportunities for Speakers of Less Commonly Taught Languages. So my name is Paige Hendricks. I'm the project manager for the American Institute of Pakistan Studies, otherwise known as AIPS. I'll be moderating the session along with my colleague, Marissa Beatty. She's the coordinator for SASLI, the South Asia Summer Language Institute. We're both housed in the LPO, Language Program Office at UW-Madison, just the start of a whole bunch of acronyms you'll be hearing today. Special thank you to our four panelists who have joined us today. We have Brian Cooke, Rori Difiore, Katie Jost, and Mark Lilleleht with us this afternoon, and I'll introduce each one of them before their presentations. So as with the keynote speaker earlier today, we'll be moderating the chat for questions, and those will be answered after all of the panelists have presented. Each panelist will have about 20 minutes to present, so we'll have a whole bunch of time at the end for questions. So to start us off, we're gonna go with Brian Cooke, and I'll introduce him a bit here. Brian is a program officer for Project Go and language training centers at the Institute of International Education, IIE. Brian rejoined IIE as a program officer in 2018, having initially worked at the Institute from 2009 to 2010. Prior to rejoining, Brian worked in several DoD program support and nonprofit management roles, including most recently as the Vice President of Operations and Strategy at the Manufacturing Institute. And then from 2013 to 2017, Brian served as Chief of Staff and later as Executive Director of the Armed Forces Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and promoting the physical, mental, and emotional wellness of military service members, veterans, and their families. And prior to that, Brian was a senior policy analyst at the Charles Group, a government affairs consultancy specializing in national security policy and DoD management issues. From 2005 to 2008, Brian served on active duty as a U.S. Army field artillery officer. He was deployed during this time to Baghdad in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom as a platoon leader and staff officer in the 4th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division. Brian is also a 2005 graduate of Georgetown University's Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service, where he majored in international politics and studied Russian. Brian also holds an MA in Global Security Studies from Johns Hopkins University, earning honors for his thesis titled The United States Army and Counterinsurgency, History, Culture, Application, and Institutionalization. Originally from Freehold, New Jersey, Brian has lived in Washington, D.C. since 2009. So that's Brian Cooke. Thank you for joining us, Brian. I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you, Paige, and that was entirely too much of Brian Cooke, and I am thoroughly embarrassed that I forgot to send my short bio and not the long bio. I think y'all had that in your files from a year or two ago, and I thought that was just going to get posted on the website and not read out loud, but thank you anyway. In a much shorter way, I'm Brian Cooke. I'm a program officer at the Institute of International Education. We are a nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C., and we are honored to act as the administrative agents of Project Global Officer for the Defense Language and National Security Education Office. In the spirit of showing rather than telling, I think we have a quick video queued up that would show you all and anybody else who tunes in later a little bit more about what Project Go is from the perspective of some of our program alumni, and then I can get into the details right after that.
Marissa, I think you might have to unmute.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Please.
Thank you. Is this better?
No, I still couldn't hear it on my end. Can anybody else?
No, I'm not hearing it either. Did you press play? I couldn't tell. So I think if you want to stop the screen share, and then when you go to share it again, when it opens like the Zoom settings, there's a checkbox and picture audio. I think that might be the solution.
Okay, I will give that a try. Okay.
I was able to go to Shanghai and Qingdao,
Moscow,
Kiev, Ukraine,
Kenya, Siberia.
Batumi, Georgia.
I would definitely not be the same person that I am today without Project Go.
These experiences definitely carry over into my life, and I take them with me everywhere.
There is an aspect of the program that speaks to everyone, the same way languages do.
Having some of this previous immersive, intensive experiences, I think prepares your mind a little bit for being able to more easily adapt.
It's an opportunity to go and experience another culture. It's an opportunity to grow your language skills. And it's an opportunity to go and get some experiences that you just could not get if you're staying in the States. Just extremely humbled and thankful that I was able to participate in the program.
Well, thank you so much for playing that. I know that after 2.5 years, sometimes Zoom can still confound us. So thank you for working through that. So I know this is the professional development panel. So I guess I should frame my few minutes of remarks, and certainly not 20 minutes, as this would be professional development for students who are interested in joining ROTC, the Reserve Officers Training Corps, or are already in ROTC. That fundamentally, because Project Go is for ROTC students, that you need to consider that professional development if you're choosing, while as an undergraduate or graduate student, to essentially go down the path of the profession of arms in your post-collegiate career. But let me just pause there for a minute. I think we do have some slides.
Yep,
Just
I
wanna make
can
sure we get them.
share
Thank you.
those.
Just want to make sure I don't miss any important points here. So you saw those young dynamic officers speaking in, I think, a much more credible way than I can about what Project Go is. But let me make sure that I explain the facts and foundation of the program. So it is a Department of Defense program aimed at improving language skills and cultural and regional expertise and intercultural communication skills. We have partnerships with 28 colleges and universities across the country that in turn provide what are fundamentally summer language training scholarships to ROTC students. We have both domestic and overseas programs. They are intensive. They are generally in the summer, and we offer programs for beginners through advanced language learners. You can see here, and obviously this is the less commonly taught languages career fair, but the languages currently featured through Project Go: Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Hindi, Indonesian, Japanese, Swahili, Persian, Portuguese, Russian, and I think something that I can't see because it's blocking on my screen, and then a whole host of overseas program locations. Let me also note that we were very excited to be able to send students back overseas this summer after a couple of years of not being able to travel. Let me also point out that some of these locations are subject to change. both due to some ongoing COVID concerns, then also the global security environment. So for example, we did not have Project Go students in the Baltic states this summer because of the security situation with Russia and Ukraine, but hope to return back next summer. Key to point out is that though we have these partnerships with 28 universities across the nation, Project Go itself is open to any ROTC student nationwide from any of the service. So meaning the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, or Marine option midshipmen in Navy ROTC. You can go to the next slide. So again, talking about career outlook and the professional development side of Project Go, that even if or even though it's for undergraduate and graduate ROTC students, we do want our alumni, and as you heard those young officers talking about, to be able to utilize their language and culture skills when they do commission on active duty or in the reserves or the National Guard in the services. And so typically the way that it works is that you would go through ROTC and participate in Project Go. And let me also point out that we do encourage multiple summers of participation, or you can apply multiple times, and we do get return participants that you would commission and go through your initial training pipeline and some sort of a military specialty. So being an infantry soldier, a pilot, or an intelligence officer, a logistics officer, and then look for ways to utilize your language and culture skills in the services, either in like really codified language billets or in opportunities that might come to you because of your language and cultural skills and background. So some examples of this would be to work as a foreign area officer, or FAO. FAOs are regional experts with fluency in an assigned language or languages, and they get to work as strategic advisors to the commanders of the combatant commands, which are the 4-star headquarters that are responsible for different areas of responsibility around the globe, or as advisors to ambassadors and US embassies. You might be able to use your language and culture skills in operational assignments in the different areas of operation. So you see these acronyms on the screen here: Central Command, African Command, Indo-PACOM is Indo-Pacific Command, that on operational deployments or in training deployments, getting to liaise with foreign and partner militaries, or potentially for service members in the National Guard. There's the National Guard State Partnership Program, which pairs state level National Guard units with partner forces in foreign countries and creates very long-standing ties between those units. There's opportunities to use language and culture in military intelligence and in special operations, which includes units like Army Special Forces or civil affairs and psychological operations. And then on the Air Force side, want to point out there's what's known as the Language Enabled Airman Program, or LEAP. And the LEAP is a program that codes you as a language specialist throughout your career. And so even though you might be a pilot or a logistician, that when the Air Force identifies a need for somebody with a particular language or experience in a particular region, even if they're not a full-time language professional, LEAP is a program that allows you to essentially then get assigned to those assignments, but also to continue your language and culture training throughout your career. And then, of course, I think what you'll hear about in other panels today, all sorts of post-service opportunities in government, business, law, education, and NGOs that would draw on both your military service, but also your language and culture skills. Next slide. So I'm not going to read these, and I recognize that the screen is probably too small for anybody to read through these. I just wanted to draw attention again to Project Go does have alumni on active service in the military services, and they are finding their ways to use their Project Go language and culture experiences in their service, in operational settings. We have a great anecdote. I believe this one's not on the website, actually. This was in a live webinar we did where somebody who had participated in Project Go 3 times as an Army undergraduate cadet wound up getting assigned to Syria, but because he spoke Russian, he was assigned to a headquarters that did deconfliction with the Russian forces that were also in Syria. So not his specialty, but an assignment that was available to him only because he developed this Russian specialty and then was deployed to a region where you wouldn't necessarily think the Middle East, this is where I'm going to use my Russian training. But because there were Russian forces present in that area, he was called upon to provide a very critical service. And next slide. And so really, again, I'm not going to go for 20 minutes here. If you like the video that we showed at the beginning of this, there's a few more alumni testimonials on our website. And then in general, for more information, please go to rotcprojectgo.org. If you are an undergraduate or graduate ROTC student currently and you're interested in applying to Project Go, please know that our application opens on October 3rd of this year. And at any time, if you have any questions about Project Global Officer, please email us at rotc@iie.org. And otherwise, thank you so much for the invitation and for listening today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Brian. If you have any questions for Brian, please leave them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Let me get out of this here. Okay, and next up we have Rori Difiore, who is Communications Officer at the Critical Language Scholarship Program. Rori works to increase the visibility of the CLS program through communications and social media. Before joining the CLS team, Rori worked in social media, member communications, and event management at ISEP Study Abroad. Rori received an MPP from George Mason University's Schar School of Policy and Government and a BA in sociology from the University of Mary Washington. As an undergraduate student, Rori studied abroad in Florence, Italy, cementing her love for international travel and priming her for a second study abroad in Japan during her master's degree. Take it away, Rori. I'll share your slides as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige. So it's great to be with you all today. I know I have a captive audience because you all already know how important language learning is, and CLS is a great opportunity for both undergraduate and graduate students of all majors to learn critical needs languages. So we can actually go ahead and advance to the second slide. So the CLS program is a program of the U.S. Department of State with funding by the U.S. government, and it's supported in its implementation by our team at American Councils for International Education. It is a fully funded summer study abroad program. And as I mentioned, it's for students currently enrolled in a U.S. degree seeking program in both undergraduate and graduate studies in absolutely every field of study. As you all know, as you likely know, critical languages are less commonly taught in schools, but they're extremely important for U.S. economic prosperity and U.S. national security. And as of course, the theme of this session is all about professional development. I'll definitely highlight as we go through how really speaking these critical languages is going to give you an edge when it comes to working in our globalized workforce and seeking, rewarding careers in a variety of fields. And we can go to the next slide here. So CLS offers 15 critical languages. 9 of those, which you can see in the brown box, those do not require any previous language learning experience. So you can go in with just a very basic hello and thanks in that language, and you will be in an immersive 8-week program where you'll be with others in the same boat as you, learning those languages. We do have additional critical languages that do require prerequisites. So Arabic, Korean, Portuguese, and Russian require 1 year of previous language study. And Chinese and Japanese do require 2 years of previous language study. One important kind of caveat to that is we look at that previous language study in a holistic way. So if it's through It can be through self-study. It can be because you are maybe a heritage learner of that language and that language was spoken in your home environment. All of that is taken into account. You can take that into account when you self-assess what language level you should be in for the program. And so that does allow some flexibility there in terms of getting to those prerequisites. Okay, I think we can go ahead to the next slide. In terms of the many benefits of CLS, one of the huge ones, of course, is that it is a fully funded program. That means the program covers domestic travel from each participant's home institute in the US, as well as round trip international, to your destination overseas. The program also covers applicable visa fees, as well as the cost of tuition, room and board, cultural excursions and activities in the host country for the duration of the program, which is 8 to 10 weeks, and they begin in June or July. So we do have students currently on programs right now, which has been really exciting. I will also mention that CLS is very much a fully fledged program that it's very highly structured. So it is not like, it is not going to be something where you're going to have to determine your own courses. You're going to have to structure, your time is already really structured to take advantage of that short period of time that you're overseas and give you a completely immersive cultural and language learning experience. Another huge benefit is that alumni of the program receive credit through our partner institution, Bryn Mawr College. So they will receive academic credit as well as a certified ACTFL OPI test score, which is a great way of certifying your language level and adding that as an additional credential to your resume. And we can go to the next slide. So I think my favorite part about CLS is that it is cohort-based, which means that you are going overseas with 30 other students, up to 30 other students from all across the US who are united with you and your interest to learn a critical language, but they're from different majors. They might be different grade levels, often are different grade levels, different backgrounds, both geographically, and it really makes for a multicultural experience in many senses, because not only are you getting to know local students, you are also getting to know your cohort members that are US-based students, but very, very much and really can add some richness to your experience and inspire you to think of new ways of using your critical language learning skills in a career. You take courses together and you travel on weekends with your cohort. So you have this built-in group of friends. You also have a language partner who is a local student in the community where you're studying abroad. And they will meet with you regularly. You get to practice your language skills with them, but in a very conversational, casual way. And it's really an amazing way of learning also how to really talk and speak like people in your peer group in that country that you are overseas. In a typical year, we do place students also with host families. That has not been the case this year because we are still kind of adhering to COVID restrictions in different ways. But in the future, we hope to resume that. And also we are doing like immersive cultural experience. There's host family days where you actually are paired over the weekend with a local family, and you get to have them take you around, show you what they love most about their cities. And that can be just a really exciting experience. Okay, I think we can go next slide now. So benefits, you receive a year's worth of language study during the summer. I love that CLS is something that an experience you can have while you are still a student. And so it is a amazing way of getting not only the academic credit, but really accelerating your language learning while you are busy, while you are a full-time student. Also, there are so many other skills that you learn on a CLS program that are going to come in handy in virtually every career, things like problem solving, flexibility, adaptability. I'd say every CLS alumni that I talked to, their CLS experience was essential to the jobs they have now, whether it not a lot of times they really are using their language in their careers because these languages are so essential and so needed. But in other cases, they talked about their experience in their job interviews, and it really gave them a competitive edge and helped them stand out. Because as our keynote speaker was saying earlier, there really is so much spillover in how you communicate, how you hone your communication skills while you're studying abroad, and it really does translate to every area of your life. And we can go to the next slide. And then, of course, the relationship building aspect of this. You are making meaningful relationships with your language partners, who often our alumni keep in touch with, and then at later dates in their careers or for travel and leisure, they go back and they visit with their language partners. You also develop a really strong network of peers in terms of those on your cohort. So those are great people when it comes to job searches. They can be great, character references, if not just other people who are aware in ways that you might not be of how your critical language skills can translate to the job market. So I've heard from alumni who didn't consider certain tracks. I've heard about social workers who didn't know that they actually, as a social worker, could be involved in the Foreign Service in ways. So it is, those people really are, the networks are really strong, and you become a Department of State program alumni as well as a CLS alumni, which means even a larger scope of potential people to connect with in your network. You also receive non-competitive eligibility for U.S. government jobs. CLS, unlike a program like the Bourne program, you are not required to work in the federal government after completion of the program. But you do receive something called non-competitive eligibility. It is something that that sometimes needs explaining by when you apply for government jobs. It sometimes takes a little effort to let people know within that internal application within that system what it means. But essentially, it helps you kind of get past some of the barriers that would otherwise prevent entry into government jobs. So it is a really great resource and something that our alumni often use. And then next slide. So just wanting to kind of flag for anyone who this presentation spoke to in some way and who think they are interested in applying to CLS. The key when you're applying is to really think about how your target critical language is going to help you in your future career pursuits. We also ask a lot about resiliency. We ask that students tell us how they can be a citizen diplomat when they're overseas, and how them studying abroad with CLS is going to give them skills that they will not only grow from as an individual, but bring back to their community in the US. So all things to think about, and we've got tons of resources on our website, and I'll drop a link a little later to our apply page where you can check out more resources on that. And then last slide, next one. So CLS has not launched yet for our program next year, which means that this is a great time to be thinking about it and gives you plenty of leeway. So our application will launch. Typically, it launches between September and November, so later this fall. And For that, you do need unofficial transcripts, so a little bit easier. You don't need official transcripts while you're an applicant, but as a finalist, you would. You need 1 letter of recommendation, and then there are 4 short answer essays and tons of resources, as I mentioned, online for exactly what we're looking in responses to that. And then you would also craft a personal statement. Look for advisors at your institution to help you in this process. The essays are really important. And so ask for help in your peer group, ask for help from your writing center. You can find, if your university has a CLS advisor, on the web address below clscholarship.org/universities. You just type in your university and it will show you if there's already a CLS advisor there. If there's not, that's not an issue at all. You're still definitely able to apply without having an already established advisor, but we recommend connecting with your fellowship office and other resources you have on your campus for that. And I think that should be it. I will link a couple website links below. Oh, and of course, yes, our contact information, if you'd like to ask any more questions, is listed here. I also will plug for you to follow us on social media because we have students on program right now, and it's just the best way of getting an insider look on what they're doing and what they're up to. And yeah, that about covers it. And I'll hold questions till the end. But thank you all for listening and looking forward to your questions later on.
Thanks so much, Rory. I see we have a few questions for you that, yes, we'll get to at the end. So next up, we have Katie Jost, who is the program director at the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, otherwise known as CAORC. Katie joined CAORC in 2016, and as program director, she oversees and administers CAORC programs, including CAORC's U.S. Department of State subgrants, all fellowship programs, and the Library Acquisitions Project in West Africa. Katie also works with CAORC's network of overseas research centers on a variety of initiatives, including managing and continuing to develop an online grants administration system. And prior to CAORC, Katie received an MSc in European Political Economy from the London School of Economics and spent several years working at nonprofits, including the British Academy in London and the Institute of International Education in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being here, Katie. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Paige. So I've got a PowerPoint, so just bear with me a second while I pull that up. Okay, I think it looks like it's viewing okay. So thank you, Paige, for the introduction. I work at the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, which is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. Our offices are actually in the Natural History Museum. And we are a network of 29 different overseas research centers that are located in countries around the world. They're all independent nonprofits, and our main mission at CAORC is to promote advanced research in the humanities and social sciences. We also have a special focus on cultural heritage in many of our programs. And I'm going to speak to you today about the centers and as well as some of the opportunities that we offer and how they may help you in your professional development, especially in the context of less commonly taught languages. Actually, a lot of our centers themselves run different sorts of language programs, offer things like digital archives, various catalogs of resources that relate to less commonly taught languages. So even aside from concrete opportunities, these centers may be a very valuable resource for you in the future in terms of keeping up with these languages and your professional development. And also these centers do things like they help with visas, research clearances, they have libraries of their own, they host programs, events. And actually I'll move to the map. One of our centers is the American Institute of Pakistan Studies. So I work with Paige and also Laura Hammond, who you heard from earlier. We also work with the CLS program as well in terms of the American Institute of Indian Studies. So I think everything's sort of connected to each other in some way, which is kind of neat. But yeah, our centers are all across the globe, as you can see, and they tend to form organically. So it's usually when there's a group of academics who have sort of gotten these connections or started to form some sort of center, and then we help to develop it and to help develop some of their programs initially so that they can become centers. So it's something that's sort of continually growing and expanding as time goes on. Our newest center is actually the Inya Institute in Myanmar, and I'll speak to you a bit later in the presentation about some of the opportunities they have. And at CAORC, we have our own set of programs and initiatives. We have fellowships, we have faculty development seminars for community college and minority serving institution faculty. We actually have 3 programs in terms of these faculty development seminars that are either currently accepting applications or about to. So if you happen to know people who are interested in them, that's definitely a great professional development opportunity, though it is geared more towards faculty. But what I'll mainly talk to you today about is our fellowship programs, because I think these might be most relevant. If not now, then it may be an opportunity to consider in the future. And our flagship program is the Multi-Country Research Fellowship. It's been going on for, I think, 29 years now. So it's a very flexible program. It's quite popular because it allows fellows to go to more than one of our centers overseas. So it's kind of a unique way to connect our network, because they may go to Turkey and then go to Morocco or Senegal afterwards. So it's a really unique program. You do need to have either a PhD or be all but dissertation. And this one is only open to US citizens, but it's quite flexible in the sense that you can take multiple trips. You don't have to carry out the ward consecutively. So it's really flexible in terms of people who may have just a summer break or a winter break that they want to travel and take advantage of this opportunity. And this one is actually about to open very soon on August 10th. So it's something to keep a lookout for if you're interested. And then our other fellowship program is the CAORC NEH Research Fellowship. And this one allows fellows to spend 4 to 6 months at one of our centers. So going a bit more in depth with the research project. Usually people spend a sabbatical, or if they have significant time off for some reason, this is an opportunity that appeals to a lot of people. I should also mention that for both programs, you can be an independent scholar. We also welcome applications from community college participants. So it's really quite open. And this NEH fellowship, it's a little more relaxed in terms of the citizenship requirement. For this one, you only need to have been resident in the US for 3 years. So this one is a little bit more open in terms of international applicants. And as you can imagine, it is focused more on the humanities, though we do accept applications in social sciences if there is a humanities component to it. And this one, you must hold a PhD. So I realize a lot of people that are attending this event might be undergraduate or at the master's level, but these are definitely opportunities to think about for the future. And for both programs, we receive a lot of applications from people who have held CLS grants or Fulbright awards. So it's definitely something that as you're sort of moving along and applying to these different opportunities, these are definitely good things to keep in mind for the future. And then we actually have an alumni event coming up on September 14th. So we'll have 4 fellows that are former multi-country research fellows and NEH fellows speaking about their experiences, what it was like to carry out research affiliated with an overseas research center, what that experience was like, and especially in the context of the pandemic and giving strategies or tips to people who may be about to start field work. So definitely if you're thinking about applying, this would be a good event to attend just to get a sense of what the experience is like and what makes a successful fellowship. And then I put together a slide of a sample of different opportunities that are offered by our overseas research centers. And I tried to pick out some that are open to undergraduates and different levels. And there's something like 150 different opportunities across all of our centers and CAORC. So definitely it could not all fit on one slide, but I tried to pick out just a couple of different things that would just give an example of kind of the breadth of different opportunities. So for example, our Center for Khmer Studies, they have an opportunity for postgraduates, undergraduates to participate in an intensive study abroad program in Cambodia, focused both on language learning, but also learning the culture. So that could be for people who are interested in language learning. This could definitely be an interesting way to have more of an experiential experience and really go deep in an intensive program. Similar with our center in Turkey, they have fellowships for intensive advanced Turkish language. And again, that could be if you're currently learning Turkish, that could be an interesting way to further it even and spend time in Istanbul. And some of our centers are starting to have programs that are basically open to everyone and really geared towards experiential learning. So for instance, the center in Mongolia, they have a field school, which brings together people. It can be undergraduates, masters, senior scholars, students, so a wide range of different people to Mongolia, and where they will take you around the country and you'll have the chance to experience the culture, the landscape. So sort of a mini study abroad experience in a way. And similar with the Experience the South Caucasus Fellowship Program, it immerses fellows in the cultures of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So that's another great one. And that one as well is open to people of sort of different levels, depending if you're a student or a more senior scholar. So those are, I think, great if you're looking for maybe a shorter, just summer opportunity and a chance to also be in countries where some of these less commonly taught languages exist, so you can be around that environment. I would definitely encourage you to check out all the websites of our centers for these types of opportunities. And then, as I mentioned, our newest center is the one in Myanmar, and they've recently launched a short-term fellowship for US graduate students who are conducting research on Myanmar. And as you can imagine, it's not possible to travel there at this time due to the security and conflict issues, but it would allow you to travel, for example, to say London to visit the British Library, to then be able to carry out research, even though it's not possible to go to the country at this time. And of course, our hope is that eventually the situation will get better to where people can actually go to the country again and carry out research there. But several of our centers have these types of opportunities as well. So that's another thing to be aware of. And I think all of these sorts of grants and experiences, they definitely look good in terms of professional development and advancing your career. And so I think these are all great opportunities to keep a lookout for. And then I've also included our social media information. One thing we try to do is put sort of concrete opportunities that we find in terms of job opportunities, especially on LinkedIn. And certainly right now, there's been a lot of job opportunities popping up. I think a lot of places are hiring. So I would encourage you to also follow our social media, and particularly LinkedIn if you are interested in looking at jobs that are relevant. So, and I think that's about it. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Thanks so much, Katie. Appreciate it. And as I've said multiple times before, if you have any questions for Katie or anybody else, please flood the chat and we'll get to them after our fourth and final panelist, who is Mark Lilleleht, he's the Assistant Director for Awards at UW-Madison's Institute for Regional and International Studies, otherwise known as IRIS. Mark coordinates a number of IRIS-based awards for student research and study, as well as the campus side process in support for a number of nationally and internationally competitive awards, including, but not limited to, Bourne Fellowship Awards for graduate students, Critical Language Scholarships, Fulbright Hayes Doctoral Dissertation Research Award, among several others. He also serves as the UW-Madison's Fulbright Program Advisor and Scholar Liaison for those interested in opportunities available through the Fulbright U.S. Student and Fulbright Scholar programs. Thank you, Mark, for being here. I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Paige. Hopefully everyone can hear me. One of the things I'd like to focus on today in my role here is a quick overview of what Fulbright offers, but some of the other more sort of specific programs that are offered through my office and at other campuses. One of the key points about Fulbright that I'd like to point out is that there's a great deal of awareness of Fulbright, but in terms of what it covers and the scope of what Fulbright means, it's probably a lot more complicated than most people realize. Opportunities that are labeled Fulbright, and especially for those of you who are studying less commonly taught languages and gaining exceptional proficiency in it, not only through your summer study, but hopefully carrying on, really have a leg up in the Fulbright programs that are offered. And the scope and the range of the Fulbright offerings really will carry with you throughout your career, almost regardless of where you're going to be working. The flagship Fulbright program that often sort of at our level at various institutions of higher education that we think about when we talk about Fulbright is the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. And that's the prime vehicle by which the State Department, in conjunction with Fulbright commissions overseas, partners overseas, sees somewhere on the order of north of 2,000 folks going overseas every year. Two main tracks to that, which again, if you have an awareness of Fulbright, you probably are aware of, are the research study side of the program and then the ETA program, which is the English Teaching Assistantship program. I've got a little bit of a beef with the terminology of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, because in most cases, Fulbrighters are not students who are conducting the work. You apply as a student oftentimes, but for instance, for undergraduates, one of the requirements of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program is that you have your bachelor's degree in hand. Fulbright U.S. Student Program funds a great number of graduate students to fund their graduate school research while they're enrolled in graduate school. But for undergraduates who are considering the Fulbright program, it's really it could be your first post-graduation opportunity. And so for folks who just finished up their junior year, who are looking to, for instance, at their first postgraduate experience, now's a good time to be looking at the Fulbright program. The Fulbright U.S. Student Program, forgive me, I'm going to get lost in my own terminology there, I rely too much on the word Fulbright. Fulbright U.S. Student Program is wide open. You can fund almost anything. Build on an honors thesis, build out on independent research that you're doing or wish to conduct. And having that language expertise really can help unlock a lot of additional opportunities. One of the things that the Fulbright U.S. Student Program has really been driving home in the last couple of years in particular, it's always been a really important component, but certainly with my engagement with the program as the Fulbright Program Advisor, one of the key points that they're driving home is the applicant's interest in community engagement, both as part of the project or the work they're doing in a classroom, but also independent of that. They want to see applicants who genuinely want to engage with and are going to be living a full and robust life, both working on doing their Fulbright work, but also apart from that, in your downtime, in your time outside of the classroom, on weekends and what have you. And having a certain degree of proficiency in the language of the communities that you're working with can be incredibly important and can make you an incredibly competitive applicant for any particular Fulbright opportunity. It's not always required, but it's often preferred, and it certainly will give you an advantage, not just as an applicant, but once you hit that country and hit that community and begin your Fulbright program. As I know, in addition to the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, there's the Fulbright Scholar Program, which sees while it's aimed mainly at higher education professionals, faculty, administrators. It is the vehicle by which folks from outside of academia can participate in the Fulbright program. There's also a Fulbright Specialist Program. Fulbright U.S. Student, Scholar, and Specialist programs are all funded through the U.S. Department of State. For those who might be moving into education fields or looking at doctoral dissertation research, the Department of Education also has a number of Fulbright programs, which are labeled Fulbright Hays through their funding stream, which are available to folks both working in K-12 education and for those currently enrolled students. So there's lots and lots of Fulbright opportunities available to you. And it really, like I said, it will carry you through the bulk of your career as you are looking at exploring and building out your expertise, connecting with communities, and maybe following up on what we know as the Wisconsin idea of sort of taking that expertise abroad and into the communities in which you work. Having that background and training in the languages of the communities that you're working with, and or simply being, as Dr. Bull put out there, being able to demonstrate that level of commitment and engagement in acquiring and pursuing language training is often, vitally important in the application process, let alone providing you the skills and the resources available once you're started your work. Some of the other programs that I work with here on campus, things such as the Luce Scholars Program, Schwartzman Scholars, Yencheng Scholars Program, all offer varying degrees of opportunities to either pursue graduate degrees abroad, conduct work abroad, internships abroad. Again, in these instances, being able to demonstrate a commitment to something as complicated and as sort of time demanding as less commonly taught language acquisition really puts you in good stead. A number of these programs are direct application programs. Luce Scholars Program, for instance, you used to have to apply through your home institution, which would then nominate a slate of candidates any particular year. In this current application cycle, which is open now, it is now a direct application program. Schwartzman Scholars has always been a direct application program. Some of the other programs that I work with are a mix of the two. Somewhere you have to apply through your institution, somewhere you can apply through your home institution, somewhere where you apply directly. And I sort of want to bring that up because I think it's really important that folks who are pursuing these sorts of opportunities really reach out to campus-based resources, whether it's me, if you're a non-UW-Madison student who is just here for the summer and you've got your home institution, find out who helps manage and coordinate the campus side and the marketing of these awards. They're going to be able to provide you with resources, assistance, review draft statements, essays, all sorts of things that are going to really put you in good stead and help better position you as a competitive candidate for these awards moving forward. The other thing to keep in mind is that certainly here at the UW-Madison, once you graduate, once you move out of whatever program you are in currently, we're still here for you. So as you know, with the Fulbright U.S. Student Program in particular, for instance, once you graduate, if you're an undergraduate, graduate with your bachelor's degree, and you want to go out there and sort of get some life experience, just make some money, get a regular job for the next couple of years. 3 years from now, if the Fulbright U.S. Student Program is the right opportunity for you, you want to take your hand, try your hand at being an English teaching assistant in the classroom, come back to us. And I know a lot of campuses out there are doing the same thing. We're not interested in drawing a red line under folks when they're just a student. We want alumni to be coming back. We want alumni to be taking advantage of the resources that we have available for them. And that holds across the board. So start having those conversations with campus partners right now. One of the great things about the various Whistly programs is your language instructors are often going to know so much about resources for connecting into the home communities, both formal and informal. Have those conversations at this point. Take notes, stay in touch. Having those sorts of connections, both while you're in school and begin to cultivate them and maintain them post-graduation or as you transition to graduate school, is vitally important to being able to find the avenues to continue to build on the expertise that you're building over the course of the summer and throughout your language learning process. And so a couple other quick, just sort of general notes, and I'm really sorry about having to sort of dip in and dip out really quickly, but as with everybody else, I'll be here to answer some questions. If you're eligible for a program, you're interested in the program, apply for the program. Fulbright U.S. Student Program is a competitive program. CLS is an incredibly competitive program. Just because you don't get an award first time, there is a great deal of value in the application process, in the conversations that you're going to have around putting your application together, in the information that you're going to be gathering in that process, all of that. If you're eligible and you have the time and you have the interest, apply as often as possible. We all have to prioritize. Not every opportunity is a great fit. It's not worthwhile applying for something that you are not interested or committed to actively participating in. But if you want to be in if you think it's a program that you're interested in pursuing, pursue it. And there's no telling what sort of feedback and information that you're going to get to make yourself a better candidate in a subsequent application, whether for the particular opportunity or for something else, or for another opportunity down the line. There are limitations in terms of eligibility. There's oftentimes, as has been alluded to and discussed by previous panelists, there's citizenship requirements. There can be certain level of language proficiency requirements in a number of these awards. With a lot of the other programs, especially those that are sort of funding international master's degree programs and what have you, there's oftentimes age-limited qualities to that. 30 seems to be a fairly convenient cutoff date. For the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, there is no age cutoff there, just something to keep in mind. But there are these various eligibility requirements. Learn what they are, be aware of them. And again, as Dr. Bohl pointed out, there are a number of avenues in which a little bit of seasoning out in the real world or through another avenue of, whether it be graduate school or, sort of adventuring on your own somewhere, will often put you in good stead. So if you're graduating out of the PhD program or a master's program or your bachelor's degree and you're pursuing awards and you don't get it, go out and do the next best thing. Maintain your contacts, continue to build out your language learning every opportunity you can. 3 years from now, when things roll back around and it feels like it's time for you to apply again and reach back to your alma mater for assistance and guidance, and all those contacts that hopefully you maintained in the process. Basically, don't be afraid to talk to folks, take advantage of all the resources and folks that you've got access to right now, whether it's this summer or for the next couple of years, however long you happen to be at your home institution. Learn as much as you can and pursue every opportunity that you've got an interest in. And I can virtually guarantee you that you're going to have success with that. And you're going to certainly build skills throughout the entire process, which are going to put you in good stead, regardless of what you do in terms of next steps. So with that, I will wrap it up. And again, happy to entertain questions about specifics or general.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you to all of our panelists for such informative presentations today. We all really appreciate it. It's been great to just learn more about your programs and other opportunities that you've all discussed. So we'll now get started with the Q&A portion of our session. We're technically supposed to end or set to end at 4:30, but we'll most likely end a bit earlier today. So the first question I have here is for Brian. some of these are for everybody and some are specific to the programs that you've discussed. So this one, this student or person is asking, other than the LEAP program, what language learning opportunities are available to military members beyond Project Go?
That's a great question. So language learning opportunities beyond Project Go. As far as I know, it's the only language learning program that's codified across the services and is funded by the Department of Defense and works in partnership with ROTC. Now, there are certainly opportunities if you're on active duty in the service, either now or are going to be on active duty or in the reserves. There are opportunities to learn language if you're going into a language career field, which typically happens somewhere between the 4 and the 8 year mark of a military career. It's looking at like that foreign area officer program, which is typically around the 8 year. And that's all speaking generally on the officer side. Or if you're going into special operations, where you might be able to assess into that community around the 4 year mark, and then you'd be assigned a language and language training based on your particular region of expertise. There's language learning opportunities if you were to be enlisting in the military, and that often looks like working in intelligence or translation as a linguist or as a cryptographic language analyst. And on the enlisted side, you would wind up typically going through the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center, or DLI. But again, that's if you were directly enlisting into the military and not commissioning after college and out of ROTC. So really, just to go back to that, it's as an undergraduate, as a graduate student who's in ROTC, Project Go is the best programmatic way to study language and study abroad.
Wonderful.
Hope
Thank
that
you.
answers the question. Happy to follow up, of course.
Helpful. Thank you. This one's specific to Rori here. So for staying with host families and more conservative countries, how does the gender dynamic work in the household? So for example, can you request to stay with a female only household? Can you make requests like that?
It's a really interesting question. I think that it would come down to the fact that anyone who is serving as a host family is being selected by, I believe, our partner institute, and I think that there's a vetting system in terms of like them going through some cultural sensitivity, them being aware of some level of education in terms of how to respond to American students, understanding of American students, that I don't think that it would be, I don't think that it would be something we would take a request, because we would expect that all host families have that sensitivity so that there would be no issue, and that they wouldn't need to only be with a woman, that they would be with somebody who's non-biased and culturally sensitive regardless. But I'd say that's something that our regional program officers work on, is the pre-departure orientations for students, addressing those concerns. Students also are assigned to, they're called affinity groups. And so as they're abroad, they actually connect with alumni of the program who maybe come from different underserved populations and study abroad. They might come from different gender groups, different sexual orientations. So there's a system in place for like addressing any sort of concerns that a student has before going abroad in regard to like their gender and their identity. And we also have alumni directories where they can talk to students who alumni who have indicated that they're willing to talk to them on a variety of topics, whether it's talking to a fellow STEM major or maybe talking to another member of the LGBTQ+ community. So I would say there's a lot of resources in place to make sure the student would be comfortable and is going into their host institution and country abroad with kind of an understanding of expectations. But yeah, I'd say in terms of the particulars on that, it would be something that I would have to like inquire into like worked with a member of our team that's on more of the programmatic side on that, but hopefully that still gives a sense of the fact that we would make sure the student would be comfortable and if they were in a host family, and go into it with as much information as possible.
Got it. Thank you, Rory. So this question was specific to CLS, but I think it would be helpful maybe if everyone answered it too. What advice would you provide to students wanting to create a strong application for, like I said, CLS, Project Go, any of CAORC's programs or any of the programs that Mark mentioned as well?
I'm happy to start it off, and I did kind of load some links that I'll post to the chat now with some resources for advisors, but I would say there's some great resources there. There's also a great application tips video that talks students through each of the essay prompts, but I'd say one of the most general, and I'm sure this applies to across the board really when applying to these competitive programs, is like avoid banalities, avoid broad statements, be as specific as possible in terms of defining your goals. At least for CLS, I'd say that it's okay. I think a lot of students are hesitant to make a really strong connection between the language and their career because they're afraid their career is going to change. And of course your career is going to change. I mean, that is expected, but it does make for a much more compelling application if you really try to think of what that would look like for you down the road, and you do communicate with some specificity on that. I'd say also make it personal, make it as much as you can share in terms of your personal background. And I mean, a huge part of CLS is that we ask you to say why you should be a member of a cohort and what you uniquely can bring to a cohort-based program in terms of your unique strengths and how you can really serve to make it a positive program for everyone that's also participating in ways. So I'd say make it personal, make it specific, and yeah, avoid things like, oh, I want to be a global citizen. I think, of course, like that it has been said before, and I think that there's sometimes a tendency of thinking those are the buzzwords that readers want to hear, but actually you will make a much more compelling application by just being really authentic, telling us. I'll post actually a highlight that we did on an alumnus who joined the Foreign Service, but actually studied with CLS because he wanted to use the Korean language to start breakdancing centers around the world. So it's kind of an unconventional. He calls himself the breakdancing diplomat. His name is Victor. So I recommend checking out how people, I think even reading this spotlight on him, you can get a sense of how he made that argument in his essay. So that might be a place to look to, is some of those alumni profiles too, to see kind of how people made the compelling argument themselves too. So.
Yeah, I would just build on that I think looking at blogs that maybe alumni have written or attending events, I know also in terms of our fellows, a lot of applicants will reach out to them personally and ask them about their experience or how did they write a successful application. So I think sometimes looking at the lists of grantees, I mean, where it's possible, and even reaching out to people and just getting different advice, that can be really helpful.
I'd also just throw in, I think all the things that Rory said were incredibly on point. I think there is this tendency for folks, especially in the compressed space that many of these applications have to put their statements together, is to make these broad general statements as if they somehow cover more ground. If you're speaking in broader terms, it covers a lot more ground, but you also end up offering up fairly generic statements that many review panels have read a million times before. One of the guidelines that I give to students, especially with regards to the Fulbright U.S. student program, is if there's a passage of your statements, whether it's your statement of grant purpose there, your personal statement, that could be effectively lifted out of your application and dropped into somebody else's application and do the same thing in their application as it's doing in yours, it's probably not doing the amount of work you want it to do to make your point as an applicant and to make your point as a potential Fulbrighter or CLS student. It doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just isn't quite covering the ground you want it to do. And so, as Rori was saying, make it personal. Tell your story. You can make a broader point using very specific examples from your life, which will, and your educational experience, which will tell your review committee members more about what you hope to accomplish and who you are as an applicant, while still sort of driving at some of these larger questions, goals, commitments that you want to touch on. So it's really, really important to get in there. And in terms of like Fulbright U.S. student program, we've got, for UW-Madison students, we've got past successful statements available. I know lots of other courses do similar things. A lot of the funding institutions will offer similar aspects, whether it's through videos, tutorials, or actually, sort of draft essays and what have you. So take advantage of all of those resources and really own the application process and own the project that you're working on. Don't try to tailor that project necessarily to the requirements of the award. Make sure you own it as your own first, and then put that application together.
Anything to add on your end, Brian, or was everything covered, do you think?
I think that covered a lot. I would say one other thing, if your application involves recommendations, ask those recommenders as early as possible. Specific to ROTC commanders, they're going to want to see that you as a future officer are managing your time and their time appropriately. But I think across the board, as early as you can, let the folks know that you're requesting a recommendation from, that you're requesting it, and be specific about what is this program that you're applying to.
Great advice, everyone. Thank you so much. So we're moving from a broad question to a very specific one to Katie. Can you apply for multiple CAORC fellowships?
So you can apply. You can only receive one. So if you're applying for 2 different fellowships at the same time, you could only potentially receive one of them, but you could submit an application to both. And similar with our faculty development seminars, you could potentially submit an application to the fellowships, but realistically, you would only be awarded one. And then for anyone who's had a fellowship or some sort of grant from CAORC, you would need to wait 3 years before applying again.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you. Another broad one for everybody. If you'd like to answer this, how important is studying abroad or participating in other opportunities abroad while learning a language?
Yeah, I would say it's vital, because that's where you actually use these language skills, interact with people. So I think it's almost hard to even measure how valuable it is to have those kinds of experiences where you're abroad and really using your language skills. And I think it also, especially going back to the idea of employers and what they're looking for, I think that also stands out, and knowing that someone can really use their language skills in different types of environments.
Anyone else have anything to add, or does that about cover it?
Well, I think I would just add, I think it's incredibly important. If you want to advance your proficiency you've got to get abroad. You've got to get among communities where the language is spoken. That said, the past couple of years have been a lesson in sort of what can be accomplished remotely and in limited circumstances. And, and the fact of the matter is depending on where you are and depending on your circumstances, some folks don't have the resources available to fund study abroad. So what makes something like CLS so incredibly important is that, that is a fully funded opportunity. While it's very competitive, it provides a gateway for folks who might not otherwise be able to get abroad with both a cultural and a language learning experience. A program like Fulbright will, it can work in your favor, but lacking a study abroad experience does not work against you as an applicant. And so I think it's really critical to, if you can take advantage of the opportunities and get abroad for the language learning portion of that, take advantage of it. Do what you can to get abroad. But don't let the fact that maybe you weren't, as an undergraduate, weren't able to go study abroad. Maybe you didn't get a CLS award. Maybe you simply weren't able to afford the study abroad fees. Don't let that keep you from pursuing additional opportunities to, subsequent to that, to just because you feel like, oh, perhaps I might not be competitive for this, that, or the reason, or I don't have in-country experience. Organizations and funders are aware of the limitations and the fact that perhaps you have a different, you have a more classroom-based language experience that's still going to put you ahead of someone who perhaps had a study abroad experience to the UK, but is now looking to go and teach English in Kazakhstan, but you've got 2-3 years of Kazakh under your belt. There are all these trade-offs. So don't try to understand how a review committee will evaluate it. Get your name in the hat and don't let prior limitations hold you back from pursuing future opportunities, basically.
Great, thank you, everybody. This next one is, this one's for Mark. Again, I'm going to throw it back to you. Is it possible to apply for a Fulbright ETA position and then for a Fulbright research or study grant?
Yes, but not in the same year. So if you're applying for a Fulbright U.S. Student Program Award, you have to apply for one award to one country each award cycle. So, and Fulbright doesn't track year to year where you're applying. So you could apply this year for an ETA. If you don't receive it, you can apply next year for a research study, and so you should be and can apply for those opportunities that make the most sense for you in any particular award year. Once you secure a Fulbright U.S. Study Program Award, you can apply over the course of the next 3 award cycles, but you are what is called deprioritized as an applicant. So you are technically still eligible, provided you meet all the other eligibility requirements, but you essentially sort of fall to the bottom of the pile when it comes to the evaluations. Once those 3 years pass, however, you're back in there as if you never got one. And so I see every year, I'll see a number of applicants, often in graduate school, who are seeking funding to fund their dissertation research through the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, who previously 5 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, secured an ETA award through the Fulbright U.S. Student Program as well. So those are the limitations. It's year to year, absolutely open season. But any particular award year, you can only apply for one award to one particular country each cycle.
Got it. Thank you so much. Brian, this one's for you. Do applicants need any prior language experience to apply for Project Go?
Absolutely not. We have a whole suite of entry-level beginner programs. If you, once the application is open on October 3rd at rotcprojectgo.org, there's a search function, and within that function, you can search and sort by language year. And so there's always a wealth of year 1 programs that required no prior experience in that language. to go sort of back to the question about what makes a strong application, just speaking about beginning level programs, key there is to make clear your commitment to learning that language, even if you don't have prior experience in that particular language.
Great to know. Thank you. This is for everybody or anybody who would like to answer it. And we have just a handful of questions left to go. Are non-US citizens eligible for any of the opportunities that have been discussed, or are they mostly just targeted for US citizens?
Yeah, so our NEH fellowships, those are open to anyone who's been living in the US for at least 3 years. And I know that that's something that tends to go across the different NEH programs. I think it's in terms of non-US citizens, sometimes looking at different foundations can be helpful, like Getty, Mellon, they tend to be a little bit more flexible with that. So that's one piece of advice in terms of searching for different opportunities.
Project Go, you do have to be a US citizen to apply.
Same with CLS.
In terms of the range of Fulbright programs, general breakdown is those that are funded by state, Fulbright US Student Program, Fulbright Scholars Program, Fulbright Specialist. You do have to be a US citizen. Those Fulbright programs falling under the Fulbright Hayes rubric through the Department of Education, there's a little bit more flexibility there, US citizen or permanent resident. A number of the particular like master's degree programs that I work with are actually open to citizens from around the world, and any particular campus in terms of the shorter term funding. I know the UW-Madison has been very conscious in terms of making its graduate student research funding available regardless of sort of what your citizenship status is. But those the more flexible funding that's in terms of open to non-citizens and citizens and permanent residents alike tends to be smaller. With the larger awards are often funded by, especially when funded by the US government, come with a little bit more limitations in terms of citizenship requirements.
Perfect. Thank you all. Rori, for the CLS program, do you need to be a full-time student, or can part-time degree-seeking students apply?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can be, you can be a part-time student and still participate in CLS. I think maybe something I said during the presentation might have implied that you have to be full-time, but you do not. You can be part-time as long as you are at the culmination of your time, you are a degree seeking student. But yes, part-time students are eligible.
Great, thank you. And we have just 2 more questions, unless any of our participants have any other last minute ones, please put them in the chat. Katie, how do you become a member of the member institutes that you mentioned, or is that kind of specific to each institution? I'm sure it might vary, but could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there is a process and a set of criteria, which it's not so much my area, so I don't know the full set of criteria, but it's things like you have to be able to run a fellowship program. There's certain things that you need to sort of demonstrate. And then if someone has that potential, we can work with that group to try and develop a center. We usually also go to the State Department and see if it's something they're interested in funding. Most of our funding does come through the State Department, but there is kind of a set procedure, and it has to go to our board and to have votes. So it is quite a process, but at the same time, it does happen. We do have new centers that have joined. I mean, we've had one recently. We have another one that's starting to go through the process. So, and feel free to send me an email and I can put you in touch with the correct person to give a more detailed response.
Sounds good. Thank you. And if just more details on joining the actual institute, I can speak a little bit about that. Like if this person was curious about joining AIPS or AIIS, for example, it sounds like those are specific to each institute. So AIPS, you have to do work in Pakistan studies. you have to be affiliated with a US institute within the last 3 years, and different criteria like that. So it just depends on each member center as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that because each center has its own process, its own procedures for affiliation or membership, and they also offer different things in terms of their membership. So it's really dependent on each organization.
Perfect, thank you. And Mark, our last question is directed at you. What types of languages and levels are supported by the Fulbright programs?
Everything. I mean, this is one of the beauties of really all the Fulbright programs is Fulbright's not sort of keyed to language acquisition. It's really your opportunity as a potential Fulbrighter at all levels to use your language abroad and to use the expertise that you've developed in language acquisition, both to pursue work that you're interested in and to engage with the community. And really because of the breadth of the offerings and the sheer open-endedness of it, if you've got a project, if you've got an interest in teaching English, if you've got this, that, or the other thing, and you've got language skills behind it, you're going to be able to find a Fulbright opportunity of one sort or another that's going to allow you to exercise and continue to build out that expertise in the community in which it's spoken. And so it's really one of the great challenges of Fulbright, and one of the great opportunities of Fulbright is exactly how open-ended it is, but it demands then of applicants that you're bringing a certain commitment and a certain sort of focus in terms of what you're hoping to do eventually to the application process. So, and this is another instance where coming in and talking to me, talking to mentors, talking to language instructors can all be vitally important to help develop and sort of begin to game out some of those ideas, get some of that focus on various projects, and putting together something that is both of interest to you and of interest to Fulbright at whatever level to fund to continue to build out that language and that interest in connecting in the home communities.
Great, thank you, Mark. So it sounds like that's it for our Q&A. We'll wrap up a bit early today. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists and our participants this afternoon, both here joining us now and those watching the recording later on. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the career fair. If you have any further questions or wish to get in contact with one of our panelists or their organization, we'll be happy to help. So you can either email Lichtel Careers, and Marissa will be putting that email in the chat, or find their information under exhibitors on the Lichtel website. And that's also going in the chat. If you wish to see the other panels, we'll be uploading a recording of the event on our YouTube page, and that will all be linked on that website as well. For those of you still wondering what to do next, the Lichtel website also will upload a What's Next tab with more information on how you can prepare for professional development and career opportunities. So thanks again for attending, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
all.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.